Morning. I'm glad that Paul said that links still count. This could have been kind of awkward, if not. Right. Right, let's go. So, as Tim said, I'm Paddy. I'm the co-founder of Era. I'm going to talk to you about link building as well, but from a different angle and perspective to Paul. And this is something I've wanted to talk about for quite a while, and it stems from conversations that I have with potential clients. So when a new client gets in touch with us at Era, nearly always they ask the same kind of questions. And one of those questions is, what kind of clients do you work with at the moment? What brands are they? Is it B2B, B2C? What industries? How big are they? Budgets, that kind of stuff. Perfectly fair questions. And I feel a bit weird answering it sometimes because, so the answer is that they range massively. So our smallest clients are 2 or 3 people in size, so 2 or 3 people in the whole company, not the marketing team, that's the whole company. And these aren't startups, these are companies that have been around for 10 years. Our biggest clients are in like FTSE 100, top 20 companies in the world, turning over hundreds of billions of dollars. And kind of everything in the middle we work with across loads of different industries. And when I give that answer, it feels a bit, I'm not lying, because that's the truth, but I'm not really answering the question because I'm kind of saying, well, we work with anyone and everyone across loads of different industries. And what that's made me realise, and I've had that for 2.5 years now of running Era, this sheer range of clients in different industries and different sizes, it's made me notice a few things. The one thing that always comes up, and I've noticed this quite a lot in the last 6 months or so, is they all face the same link building challenges. It doesn't matter whether they're a brand, a startup, you don't know who they are, an SME, a billion-dollar company. It doesn't matter who they are. They all have the same fundamental challenges in getting links. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about budgets with links, something that I don't think is talked about that much. And importantly, I want to give you some tactics, some ideas for going away and building links, whether you're an SME, whether you're a billion-dollar company. Either of those things, you can hopefully use some of the things I'm going to share. But to try and keep the day going on and honest, I want to be really honest with my first slide. This is the softened down version of it. I think the actual reality is link building is fucking hard. Like, it's really difficult to get right. And anyone that kind of says it's easy either buys links, which is fine, we'll talk about that shortly, or doesn't really do it. It's a really difficult thing to get right because it's risky and it may not work. You could do really cool content, you could do really cool campaigns, and you might not get any links. You could put lots of hard work into a piece of content, but you're reliant upon someone else to actually do the thing that you want to do. And whenever that happens, obviously you're not in control of that, so it may not actually work. Even if it does work, it may not work, and Paul touched on this a little bit around links actually working and improving rankings. Now, just to be really clear on something, this article was on Moz late last year, talked about this very concept, about the fact that you could have a piece of content go viral, get lots and lots of links, and not see that uptick in traffic and rankings. And the principle behind this article was correct. I think what Thomas was trying to say is something that needs to be said and needs to be talked about. The data points within it, the examples, I'm not as keen on, but the principle behind it is a perfectly fair one that we need to ask. So you could get link building right, you could build hundreds and hundreds of links, but you may not see the impact. So even if it works, it may not work. And the risk of link building is tied to budget. But really importantly, not in the way that you may think, because having more budget doesn't necessarily reduce the risk. Having more budget doesn't mean you're going to absolutely get more links. It does mean that, budget is relative. So depending on the client you're working with, budgets will be big or small to them and will be worth the investment. So for one client, 20K for a one-off campaign could be perfectly reasonable and a very good investment. For another client, 20K a month might be right. For another client, 20K a year would be about right. It's all relative to the client that you're working with at that particular time. And if they can get a return off this kind of spend, then that's totally fine. But a quick side note, a quick story, this is from a few years ago now. I wasn't on this project, but I was kind of around the team that were working on it, where a client basically canned about 140 grand's worth of content that is still sitting there today, has never seen seen the web, has never gone live. And they just wrote it off because it didn't get through the final VP's sign-off. It had gone through every other sign-off. The final VP didn't like it, canned the whole lot. No, like, okay, let's just write it off. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, no, that shouldn't be a thing. That would bankrupt most companies, having just writing off that amount of work and getting nothing back for it. But to them, it's a drop in the ocean in terms of budget. Okay, they weren't happy to write it off, but they were able to. So it kind of shows the scale that we're working with sometimes. But importantly, having those big budgets doesn't mean that you're going to get more links, particularly if you don't let the content go live. But anyway, it doesn't mean you're going to get more links. Unless you buy them. I can kind of feel Paul looking at me right now, thinking this, and probably a few of you thinking it as well. I'm not going to talk about buying links. I'm not going to go into that. There's a man right over there who can talk to you about that all day long if you want to. So go for it. I'm sure he'd be happy to tell you some stories. But more budget can equal more time. The way that agencies work is often day rates, hourly rates. So the more budget you've got, chances are the more time you're going to get from the agency. But even that isn't really a guarantee that you're going to get more links. And I've sat there, even the last couple of years at Era, I've sat there doing link building, trying to get links to a piece of content for hours, days, weeks. And sometimes it just doesn't work. Throwing more time at something doesn't make up for a shit idea in the first place. It's not just about the time that you spend. It's about more than that. And this is something, cut off there a little bit, but anyway, this is something which you'll see from a lot of agencies and something which Laura touched upon a little bit, and we do this. So you come up with a content idea, you design and build it, then you do the outreach, and you kind of rinse and repeat and keep doing this as often as you can to get more links. And it can work really, really well. It does work really well. This is something that we did for one of our clients, kind of piece about the world's booziest countries. Turns out it's Moldova. No idea how or why, but turns out Moldova was top of the list. And this worked really, really well. Got lots of links, did really well for traffic. But it can also fail. So that process that you go through is no surefire guarantee that you're going to get links. But it rarely fails because of budget. Looking back over all the content pieces that we've done over the last couple of years, we've had wins, we've had failures, we've had things that are kind of in the middle somewhere. Looking back at them, they rarely fail when we've said to ourselves, if we'd had that little bit more budget or a little bit more time, we'd have nailed it. That hardly ever happens. And there's other reasons why it can fail, and I'll share that in a second, but I wanted to quickly share a story about where I've screwed this up and kind of where I've learned this myself. And this is honestly true. So this is Shannon, our head of PR and content at Era. She came to me one afternoon with an idea for a client. And it was a totally random idea for a very, very small content campaign. And normally, I think I must have been a bit grouchy that day, because normally I'm quite supportive about random ideas. I think I replied something along the lines of, it won't work, but try it anyway, and just kind of let it get on with it. I like to think I'm quite a supportive boss, but this day I wasn't. I was a bit grumpy. So I just said, just try it. I don't think it'll work. It's too simple, it's too quick, but give it a shot anyway. We were already kind of partway through the month with the client. We'd already done a piece of content for them. We was always doing quite well with links, so there was not really much risk. We were kind of doing it as a bit of a added value for the client to see whether it could work or not, but I didn't think it would work. It took a couple of hours. She briefed our designer, got it live quite quickly. She launched it at the exact time when you're not supposed to launch content, apparently, so 2 p.m. on a Friday. And some of the links that it got, these are the ones that look good on the slide. It got loads and loads of links from other places as well. By 5 p.m., so within 3 hours of launching it, of doing that first outreach, it got on those top tier links and a bunch more as well. And I was sat there thinking, we spend weeks and weeks and weeks doing content for clients, and yet something that took a couple of hours works really, really well. And it kind of showed me, I made that assumption it wouldn't work because it was too simple, it was too quick, we weren't going to put anywhere near as much time into the ideation, the outreach, the prospecting as we normally would. There's no way it's going to work, but it did. Now at this point, I think you probably want me to show you what the content was. I'm not allowed to. If you grab me afterwards, I can explain what it was, but I can't show you, unfortunately. But it's a very, very simple graphic that we sent out, and it worked really, really well. It's the lowest budget piece of content we've ever launched. When you look at the time it took for the design, the idea itself, the outreach, lowest budget piece ever for one of our biggest clients. But in terms of the return, number of links we got, it's one of our most successful. It's not the most successful in terms of raw number of links, but it's up there in terms of time spent versus what we got back from it. So why content really fails? Hopefully by now this is kind of coming through. It's not because of this. It's because of one or a combination of other things. One being you don't have a story. If you haven't got a story, no one's going to care, especially journalists, especially bloggers and writers. They're not going to look at you, not going to take it seriously. Or you're not adding any kind of value with what you're trying to do. So if someone's done a content piece before that's worked really, really well, you've done something similar, but you've not really added anything above and beyond what's already been done, such as a cool design, execution, new data, a new story, it's not going to fly. Or not executing well. So the final product not being what it should be. So you might have a cool story, but if you're not executed very well and someone can't see that story and understand it, it's not going to fly. And you can have any combination of these things as well. And sometimes you can have a really bad execution, but if you've got a fantastic story, it can work. So these things are interchangeable. So what I want to talk about is 6 ways that we can build more links, make content, make digital PR, make link building more successful, regardless of budget. Because as I've said, budget itself isn't the driver of success. It can definitely help. I'm not saying this is an exact correlation. This is my experience talking. So budget can definitely help, but it's not the thing that is going to get you out of trouble with link building and solve all of your challenges. So the first thing, this is something we're trying ourselves at the moment, and it's difficult, but I think it's going to work quite well. So we're trying to limit the scope of our execution. So it's quite easy to get to the point where you want to do something that's interactive, just for the sake of it being interactive. And what I'm really talking about here is restrictions on creativity, and that actually helps. So it can be quite easy sometimes to go into a meeting room, get your team together, spend an hour brainstorming, come up with cool ideas, and that can work. But imagine a different scenario. Say you get 5 people around a table, you give them a pack of Post-it notes each, and you say, okay, you've got 2 minutes to write down 30 ideas. 30 ideas, 1 Post-it note for each idea, and you've got 2 minutes. It's nearly impossible to actually write 30 ideas in 2 minutes. You might get between 15 and 20 if someone's really fast, but in 2 minutes, 5 people around the table, you're probably going to end up with about 80, 90, 100 ideas in the first 2 minutes. Because the restriction, that time restriction, and the impossible nature can drive the creativity rather than having a lot more time to think. So restrictions can actually help. Imagine you don't have dev resource. Imagine you've not got a developer to help you execute a piece of content. How would you do it? Having something that's quite static and something which can't be interacted with or played with is a really strong test to see whether you've actually got something strong or not, and got a story. Because if you can't kind of communicate quickly in a static form what a story is or what is important about what you're trying to say, it might not be that strong in the first place. And don't fall into this trap. We've done this recently. We've kind of held our hands up to it a few times with clients where we've maybe overcomplicated builds because we made them interactive to make them interactive. So now we're challenging ourselves to actually not do that if we don't really have to, or if it doesn't add any additional value to the content piece. This is one of my favourite examples, and actually one of my favourite pieces that we've ever done, partly because of the content and the story behind it, but also the execution. So this was a piece we did for a company talking about the makeup of their executive boards and their board members, so male versus female, and showing how many males they had versus how many females. And we've talked for quite a while about how to actually visualize this. You can do data viz, you can do graphs, you can do charts. There's lots of cool ways. Our designer actually did this, which is a simple GIF, flicking on and off, showing the difference between males and females. And this is for Apple and General Motors. It's just a GIF. It's not complicated. We were on the verge of doing some really fancy and interactive just to do that. But it's actually just a GIF. It takes barely much more time than just doing a normal design. And it worked really, really well because it communicated that message really fast. Number 2, this has worked really well for us the last couple of months. So in terms of the execution of a content piece, that is something which I personally struggle with quite a bit. So I might think about an idea, but think how am I actually going to get this across? How am I going to communicate it with someone? So we've actually come up with some cheat sheets to try and help with this. Because in this situation, you kind of need a nudge sometimes, particularly if you're not kind of naturally into data viz or naturally inclined as a designer, you need some help to actually do that. The first thing to mention, if anyone's got content teams, PR teams, I can't recommend this workshop enough. This is from David McCandless, who wrote Information is Beautiful. Every few months he runs a workshop in London going through this exact process. So if you've got budget to send your team here, I'd highly, highly recommend it. But one of the things that we took from this, so he talks about this chart, which is basically lots and lots of different types of visualizing data. We printed it out onto a board, put it into one of the meeting rooms, along with a couple of others that we got from the workshop as well. So when we're asking ourselves that question, how do we execute, we can literally go through all of this, sketch them out, see, well, would that one work, would that one work? It's just that way of getting to where you want to be that little bit quicker. And it's a cheat sheet for how to execute visual content. And these categories as well, we've got phone boards in the office to try and give us that push and give us that nudge towards what the answer is, rather than trying to think of it off the top of our heads. I love friendly stalking. It's cool. If I was a full-time PR, I'd probably do too much of it. This is something I wanted to add in as a bit of a tactic that we're messing about with at the minute and experimenting with. So, leading into this, I read this a couple of months ago. Every time we log into Facebook, there's apparently around 1,500 stories that they can show us at any one time. And that's for the average user. Apparently, power users, it's more like 15,000. People who've got lots of friends, like lots of pages. And when you think about that, that's a shitload of stuff that someone could see. It's a lot of stuff that a journalist, a writer, or a blogger could see as well. But if you can put your content in front of them when they log into Facebook and get it into their eye line outside of an email, you've got a bit more chance of them taking notice. It's actually quite easy. You can target people via demographics on Facebook, type in employers, The Sun, The Guardian, whoever it is you want to target, then also must match job title journalist, writer, blogger, whatever you want to do. And it will only show your content to people that match that criteria. So email someone one day, show them ads the following day, or vice versa. It's going to plant that content in their mind that tiny little bit more. Number 4, I'm going to say this because I know he's sitting in the audience. I've stolen this from my old boss, Will, a little bit. If he wasn't here, I wouldn't give him the credit, but he's here, so I probably should. And again, we're trying to do this more. We're not perfect at this at the moment, so we still tend to think of a design as how it looks on a desktop when we're working in the office. But the truth is, a lot of people will view your content on a mobile device. So thinking about it mobile first is really, really important. And I wanted to quickly touch upon something here that Rand at Mars tweeted a couple of years ago now, that showed the line of desktop, which is the blue line, against the green line, which is the growth of mobile. So basically, Rand was saying that mobile isn't killing desktop because you can see the line is staying pretty consistent. It's killing our free time. Now, I mostly agree, but there's something which I think isn't quite right about that. I don't think mobile is actually killing our free time. I think that our free time used to be stuff like this, where you would read a magazine, you would read a book, you read the newspaper when you had a spare half an hour. Now it's this. I mean, it's quite kind of funny. You watch everyone outside kind of just playing on their phones waiting to come in. That's what you do when you've got a spare 5 minutes or a spare 10 minutes. If you're on the tube in London, you don't talk to anyone, you just get out your phone. That's what we do now in our spare time. So the way that we read content is changing to be mobile first. And when we're producing content for our clients, we have to take that into account. So we think of it like this. Desktop, you browse Facebook, you see an article, you click through to it. It's actually more like this. It's about communicating the message in the right format, which means thinking about the mobile execution as being just as important, if not more important, as desktop. Now, I'm not going to claim to be able to go into some loads of detail, plus I haven't got time, but this deck, which Vicky from Distilled presented at Brighton SEO a couple of years ago, is still one of my favourite decks. It talks all about designing content for mobile, so I'd highly recommend checking that out. I'm going to tweet this later on as well, so you can grab it there on the hashtag. Number 5, this is something that works really, really well for lower budgets, particularly B2B clients, which can be quite challenging, but this is a method that's working really well for us at the moment. So when you look back at what traditional PR is, they didn't use infographics, they didn't use data viz or interactive pieces. They didn't need visual content selling stories. They needed some data, some information, or an opinion that's actually different, something that goes against what's already being said. That's all they really needed. And you need relevance and timeliness when you're doing this kind of thing as well. So as an example, one of our clients kind of throughout 2016, they were a B2B client, a copywriting agency. We were pushing quite a lot around productivity, productivity hacks, being more productive, that kind of stuff at work. And that worked really well because that's being talked about quite a lot in their industry. This year, it's actually shifted more towards AI, how AI is going to affect copywriting. Will AI be able to write content? What's it going to mean for the industry? So now the relevance is actually around that rather than productivity because people are writing about it a lot. So it's all about the relevance and timeliness as well. And I'm going to go quite fast. I don't want anyone to say that's all I've said. But relationships truly do matter when it comes to PR. I know that it matters in link building generally, but they really do matter with this kind of PR because once you've built a great relationship with a publication, particularly B2B, you can go back to them over and over and over again for different clients. And it doesn't take that long to build up. So to actually do this, you need a single piece of content. It just needs to be a written article, a Word doc, a Google doc, something like that. And it's what PRs call advisory copy, which is basically tips, tactics, and takeaways. I've had to blur out who it's for, but this is one that we did for one of our clients, which talks about recruitment. So it's an article by the CEO of the company with various different tips and takeaways that someone could use when recruiting for their own company. And we sold this in to several sites, letting them take the bits that were most relevant to them, making the CEO accessible for interviews, for anything they wanted extra. We would write it, get the CEO to sign it off. Now, I had quite a big debate with our head of PR and content about whether this is just guest blogging. There's kind of blurred lines between all of this, but the approach here is not about the scale. It's not about doing it to get volume of links in. It's about doing it to get links in relevant publications and taking a PR approach to link building. Number 6, again, we're doing this at the moment quite a lot wherever possible. So this works quite well for lower budgets because you can reuse content by updating old data sets that you might have done. So this is, again, one of my favourite pieces of content by David McCandless. This is showing films by how true they are. So basically the blue lines are parts of the film that are true, can be verified by fact. The darker lines, the pink ones, the red ones, are ones where actually that part of the film is false. And when you think that these are actually films that are meant to be based on true stories, you can see that actually Imitation Game is pretty full of shit in terms of the actual film itself, because all these red bits, where when you go to this picture, you can hover over and see which scene it was. A lot of it wasn't actually true. But with this piece of content, they can keep adding to it. So they can use the framework they've got to add new films. The design's already there, the execution's already done for them. They watch a new film, take it apart, and they can plug it into the existing piece. We're going to do this at the moment with this piece. So this was from World Health Organization data from 2016. They've just, in the last month, released 2017 data. So as I speak, hopefully, this is being updated with 2017 data, so we can repitch it. Don't need a new design, don't need anything else to be done. We're just going to update the data, make sure it all works correctly, and then repitch it. For yearly data, so if you know that every year data gets updated, you can create the piece first, put old data into it, and then when new data comes out, just plug that into it as well. So you can get ahead of yourselves and actually launch a piece of content right when a piece of data gets released by just using old data first and just plugging a new one into it at the right time. So again, for lower budgets where you can't necessarily do content piece after content piece after content piece, you can reuse the same pieces, same frameworks, but with just new data. So to finish up, before we go to a break, hopefully that's come through at this point. It's not a key to success. It's not going to solve all of your link building challenges or problems. It can help with some of them, but don't think it's just a case of throwing more cash at something and it'll work. Focus on the story, adding value and the execution. And you can drop me a message, paddy@era.net, or grab me afterwards. I'll be around. Thank you.